This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia. Today, I'm joined by Senior Operations Specialist Tamara Vukovic to discuss what we're actually seeing in terms of the impact of the updated Amazon fees this year, now that the dust is starting to settle on all of those changes. With that, welcome, Tamara. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Julie, and thanks for having me here. There have been significant adjustments this year, and I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Awesome. Well, you are a go-to person for all things ops and on Amazon related across our team. And I believe this is your first time on the podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So while it's your first time on the podcast, you are a true expert in this area. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and hear what you're seeing and to share this update with our listeners. So we're 6 months out from the first fulfillment fee changes on Amazon. And it seems like, let's dig in now. What's it looking like in the real world? To start with, for those of us who aren't on the weeds with Amazon's fee reports every day, like you have the pleasure of being, can you refresh our memories around the main fee changes that we saw roll out this year?
Certainly. So we've seen a lot of new changes and updates this year. So I'll try to give just a quick overview. So in January, Amazon reduced referral fees for apparel products priced below $20. Then in February, new size bands for the small standard and for large standard tiers were introduced, and new large bulky and extra large size tiers replaced oversized size tier. And that, of course, led to changes in FBA fees. Also, there was an increase in prep fees and removal and disposal fees. Also, of course, because it's Amazon, we also had an increase in aged inventory surcharge and inventory stored between 271 and 365 days. Now, when going into the March, Amazon introduced new fees, and those are inbound placement fees. And in April, also new fees were introduced, and these are low-level inventory fees. Of course, Amazon also made some changes with monthly inventory storage fees, and that they reduced these fees for standard-sized products. And more granular size tiers to the storage utilization surcharge were introduced. And it's not everything about increases. Also, Amazon decreased FBA fulfillment fees for standard size and large bulky size products. And as last change, Amazon introduced returns processing fees in June.
So other than that, nothing really changed this year. I remember when they were rolling out what the changes were going to be at the end of last year, everyone was just like head exploding emoji. 1, what does it all mean? 2, how am I going to track all of this? And 3, what does it do to my bottom line? I had someone share that it kind of was like the stages of grief in terms of the processing. Like if we look back from when we learned about it to where we are now, I think the stages of grief could really be a great way of capturing how we've responded to those changes. We started very confused and overwhelmed. Then there was a little bit of outrage as sellers started to see the fees come into effect. And maybe now as we approach the second half of the year, there's some acceptance or kind of a feeling of, all right, we're at steady state. We know what the details and the variables are that we need to deal with. I'm wondering if you can give a rough synopsis of the actual impact of these fees and how we're seeing them play out across our book of clients. I'm hoping that, there's some benefits that you've seen at play.
Yeah, so I can say it's been a journey for many sellers, and they needed to adapt to these changes. But yeah, you're right. There are certainly some positive aspects that have emerged from here. So sellers who sell in apparel category, they benefit from reduced referral fees, which has lowered cost and boosted their margins. And the introduction of more granular size tiers and reductions in FBA fulfillment fees have also helped some sellers to optimize their cost. And for some, well, it depends. On average, Amazon reduced the FBA fees for standard size products by 20 cents and by 61 cents for large bulky products. But this gave us a rough 1 to 5% in decrease of FBA fees total, but it depends what product you sell. So if you were selling product that with new size tier fell into a new category, it might also happen that FBA fees increased and this impact your profitability overall.
Okay, so it's not all bad news. It wasn't all doom and gloom by any stretch. Let's maybe move into the next category of fee changes that might have been overblown, a little bit of the dramatics. Anything that was lumped into the general concerns sellers had about changes in fees, but in actuality, it turned out to be no big thing. Are there fees that you'd put into this category?
Yeah, definitely. Some concerns were focused on fees that predominantly impact sellers already struggling with their operational inefficiencies, specifically the increase in prep and removal disposal fees, as well as the storage utilization surcharge. So these fees are designed to create a further separation between operationally efficient and inefficient sellers. So the ones who have not been overly reliant on Amazon for disposing, removing their inventory, or just disposing large quantities or handling substantial amount of their prep work have come through these changes relatively unaffected. But for those sellers, the impact has been minimal because they already had efficient processes in place. And also regarding the storage utilization surcharge, these fees apply when sellers maintain excess inventory that surpasses a recent demand and sell-through rates. So maintaining a healthy sell-through rate will help those sellers to avoid these fees. Now, the flip side of this, if a seller was already struggling with inefficiencies in these areas, Amazon's new fee structure has made this even more painful for them. So essentially, the changes encourage all sellers to improve their operations and inventory management so they can avoid these costs.
Okay, you're hitting on something that's really important and interesting. And I think it's not always focused on when we talk about all these fee changes. This year feels like the first time where fees were updated in a lot of cases to act as an incentive. So it's not just about covering Amazon's costs through fee increases or padding their margins. In prior years, we came to expect that fulfillment fees were more or less applied to sellers consistently, regardless of the seller's performance. But now what you're hitting at is that the fees are designed to incentivize outcomes, operational improvements. So whether you're working to avoid too much or too little inventory or needing Amazon to prep your product, this is a shift in the approach to fee application from Amazon from years past. Now let's move to the last group of fee updates. Are there any fees that seem more universal in terms of their impact on sellers that need to adjust to the new fee reality?
Yeah, so one of these would be definitely inbound placement fees. These fees do not only affect the actual cost to sellers, but they also add complexity to their operations. Now, because sellers need to optimize where they are sending the inventory, which requires for them more planning, more internal operations, internal management. For example, like they need to mix and match their inbound shipping methods and they need to improve their packaging. So inbound placement fees vary based on item size and weight, shipment split, inbound locations, shipping mode, etc. So we all know now, these fees came into effect in March. So we all know that we have three split options. We have minimal, which is one location or incurring in highest fees, partial, which is 2 to 3 locations with less fees, and Amazon Optimize. This is when we are shipping to 4 locations, in some cases even 5 or 7 at no cost. So we audit a couple of our clients and their cases, and we've seen instances where minimal splits are more cost effective for LTL shipments because the carrier costs are lower when shipping to one instead of two or more locations. Then minimal splits are usually more expensive when shipping small parcels because shipping small parcels are generally more expensive than sending an LTL. Also, we observed situations where Amazon optimized split was actually not an option for smaller shipments. Then this forced sellers to choose one of the two splits, and this, of course, incurred in fees. So one strategy for this would be actually to rely on Amazon to handle inventory placement for a fee that is actually lower than what carrier would charge for splitting shipments. In other words, Amazon has found a way to make this cost effective for sellers by also capturing that revenue instead of the carriers. Smart move, we would say. But on the other hand, we also see instances with larger shipments, and I'm talking about thousands and thousands of units, opting for the Amazon optimized split with no fees was more cost effective than any of other two splits. So this can result in thousands of dollars in savings, especially when we're shipping smaller items. So yeah, you're completely right. This change marks a significant shift in Amazon's previously more turnkey one-size-fits-all system, because even the smallest sellers could once leverage Amazon's fulfillment with relative ease. But now we have so much complexity behind the scenes because all these costs and complex operations are now being exposed to sellers. So they now need to share more of the risks and decision-making involved in using Amazon's services, and they need really to plan, test, and evaluate all over again.
Yeah, I think you used a phrase in your response there that I think is just so important. Nothing is one size fits all on Amazon. It just can't be. Even within your one account, the one strategy does not fit your whole catalog. And when it comes to operations and the back end of your business on Amazon, from brand to brand, it is absolutely not one size fits all. So understanding how these fees play out at your account level is critical so you can make the best business decision for your brand. Off that soapbox, let's move on to, there were two fees that were rolled out most recently. The first was a low level inventory fee, and that was supposed to hit in April, but really it hit in May after Amazon credited back all of the April fees. And the latest and final fee was the returns processing fee that started at the beginning of June. We're only a couple months into these being rolled out, but what's your initial take on how much of these will impact brands based on the conversations you've been having with clients?
Yeah, so these two are the big ones. So low-level inventory fees, they were introduced to encourage sellers to maintain healthier inventory levels. They apply to standard-sized products if sellers consistently carry low levels of inventory relative to their sales. The important note here is that historical days of supply metric, it's calculated at the parent product level, so all the child products will be affected and will incur in fees when they have the same historical days of supply that falls below 28 days. Also, you cannot get charged for this fee when you don't have any stock because there are no sales tied to these fees. And this is also important to have in mind. Yeah, this is also related to exemptions that Amazon offered for us. So new professional sellers for the first 365 days after the first inventory receive date are exempt. Also the new two FBA parent products for the first 180 days after the first inventory receive date. SKUs for which 70% or more of the inventory was auto-replenished by AWD over the prior 90 days. And the last one is products that have sold less than 20 units in last 7 days, which confirms the note that I mentioned earlier that you will not get charged if you hadn't had any sales. So the actual cost impact of these fees has varied, but overall, sellers who were already efficient in their inventory management have seen minimal disruptions. However, those who were struggling with maintaining stock levels have had to make adjustments to mitigate these fees. And then we can ask the question, what can we do here? So we can use parent-child listing families. So, for example, if one child ASIN has incurs in fees and the historical days of supply is below 28 days, and it's affecting the entire variation, we can just remove this child ASIN to save the other children in this family. And you need to plan your inventory. So this is really important. You cannot fall below 28 days. So our suggestion would be plan to add at least a 7-day buffer, because you always have some hiccups. You will always have delays on Amazon side. So you need to be sure that you will always have about 28 days. And here at Acadia, we're always suggesting to not go under 45 days of stock. After you ensure that you have enough stock, you need to monitor this regularly, and you need to monitor your sales data to ensure you're meeting the required inventory thresholds. At Acadia, we use a sophisticated tool that tracks inventory data and provides a comprehensive reporting. So this means that we analyze this data along with the data that was provided by sellers, brands, that account for seasonality, supply chain status, and other factors like market trends. And then after we analyze all this data input from our sellers, then we create our own inventory recommendations. So that would be that for the low-level inventory fees. And now the ones that were announced in June, and those are the returns processing fees. Well, they apply to high return rate products in all categories, excluding apparel and shoes. So this fee only applies to products that reach a high return rate threshold specific to each category. So this is a complicated definition from Amazon, that this fee only applies to your products. Your product's return rate will be the percent of your product's shipped units in a given month that's returned by customers over that month and the subsequent 2 calendar months. So they didn't make it simple for us at all. You need to know, and everyone's need to know, that returns are inevitable. So shoppers, you can say that they are a bit spoiled and they always try to cheat the system. So they will try to get free returns and refunds, and returns will always happen. So we need to find a way. We cannot control that, but we need to find a way to improve the things that we can control. And then we can focus on those things, such as content info, product info, monitoring your customer feedback, negative customer experience data, and generally analyzing trend around customers' feedback, and at the end, just making improvements to product itself. So the other thing is we need to monitor this threshold. So probably Amazon is going to benchmark category averages. So numbers will fluctuate over time. It will change. So it will be important to know what you're benchmarking against. So you need to track this threshold. And we are yet to see the real impact of those fees, because this charge of these fees will be made between 7th and 15th day of the third subsequent month for particular month's returns. So we really have to see what happens with those ones. So sellers with products that have historically high return rates, they will see increase in their overall costs. And this will drive some sellers to invest more in product quality, to enhance the product listings and set better customer expectations. So it kind of comes down to Amazon wanting to focus more on delivering order instead of dealing with processing returns.
Nothing to it. It really, the amount of detail that goes into what could be just seemingly just a simple inventory planning sounds so innocuous, but is anything but when you factor in all of the fees and the variables at play to determine them. And I think, one of the things as we've had the conversation today, I think we're learning a lot about how Amazon is incentivizing through kind of a sticks and carrots approach with sellers. So if we think about something like product feedback and return rate, Amazon has a lot of tools like voice of the customer data to show you when you might be selling a product that's missing the mark with the intended audience, or if it needs improvement. So that's a carrot. Amazon giving you the data and insights really to improve your product and address customer concerns so that you can increase your star rating and get more sales. That's fantastic. But what seems to be more telling here is the things that Amazon is willing to deploy as sticks to incentivize, whether it's things like optimal inventory coverage or mitigating returns and overall supply chain efficiency. All of these are areas of focus where Amazon is really saying, if you're underperforming, we're not going to waste time trying to convince you to turn it around and improve your processes. We're going to just start charging you more. What does this tell us about Amazon generally now as compared to years past, where the fee increases had very different focuses?
Yeah, so that's a good point of view. So you highlighted a significant shift in Amazon's strategy. This year's fee changes indicate a strong move towards incentivizing efficiency and performance rather than just uniformly increasing fees as they did in the past. One of the key differentiators for Amazon against other marketplaces is actually their promise of rapid delivery and consistent product availability. Other platforms actually compete on price and selection, while Amazon has always set itself apart with its fast and reliable delivery. So, focusing their fee structure on encouraging optimal inventory coverage and supply chain efficiency, Amazon is actually reinforcing this differentiator. So, they're actually ensuring that sellers who contribute to this promise are rewarded and those who do not are penalized. So, we can say about this strategy that this strategy also mirrors the evolution we have seen in the peak of the COVID era to now. So during the pandemic, both Amazon and its sellers were just heavily focused on growth to meet the surge in demand. But however, as we move beyond that period, there's been a noticeable shift towards prioritizing this efficiency. So these new fees are part of that shift, enforcing the need for operational efficiency to a degree that Amazon has been less forceful about in the past. So ultimate result of these changes is a continued divergence among sellers. Those with the capabilities, with expertise, flexibility to adapt, they will thrive. But they will be able to leverage Amazon's platform effectively, and they will support the promise to the end customer of quick and reliable delivery. On the other side, sellers who cannot meet these standards, they will just find it really hard, difficult to succeed on this platform.
Well, we've really covered a whole lot today. There's a lot for everyone to digest. So I want to leave everyone with one or two things they can focus on if they don't have someone like you that lives in the weeds and makes sense of the weeds, it turns those weeds into a beautiful garden and help them, manage all the complexity. So if you think about all that we've talked about in terms of the various changes in fees and how we're seeing them actually play out, what would your advice be for the 1 to 2 things that brands should be keeping a close eye on and optimizing so that they're not overly impacted in the negative from these changes?
Inventory management, for sure. So this one is super important. And further, you can reduce returns by improving your PDPs and making use of Amazon Voice of the Customer and FBA returns page data. So these two will help you to fight these fees and changes. Also, use the Amazon dashboard, use the Seller Central. Check some of the reports that are at your disposal and they are free and they provide a lot of data like SKU economics report, inventory ledger report, FBA inventory, and the revenue calculator. Audit this performance to determine what you're already doing well and where you may be bleeding some money and making unforced errors when it comes to your profitability. So, are your inventory levels optimal? Are you selecting the cheapest option when you're sending to Amazon, etc.? So you need to audit this data and you need to audit your supply chain, your internal logistics and processes. For example, where can your team internally be better to avoid those cost changes to Amazon, like packaging practices or streamlining prep processes? Don't pay Amazon to prep your products and label your products. Can you do it yourself? So just as a conclusion, don't try to justify one fee for another. So if Amazon decreased FBA fees, it doesn't mean that you need to pay or that you're good to pay low-level inventories fees, of course. Save your money where you can. The key is also stay ahead of the Amazon. They will announce sooner or later new changes, and they will happen. So you need to plan when they announce it and before they take actual effect.
So getting close to your numbers, to what your P&L says, to what your processes are, is key to avoiding, like, as you said, those unforced errors. That's what it all comes down to. Well, this has been a great conversation. You've offered some clear, helpful advice, and I really appreciate you coming on to talk us through it. I will have to tap you on the shoulder to come back and talk to us when we need to walk through 2025 fee changes, because we know they're coming. They come every year. So we'll see if they're sticks or carrots in terms of their form for 2025. Thank you so much for your time today, Tamara.
Thank you so much, Julie. And it's been a pleasure to join you and share those insights. I know navigating through these changes can be challenging, but with the right focus, sellers can turn them into opportunities, definitely.
Perfect words to end on.